Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. The topic for our webinar is Energy Storage for Social Equity, an Introduction to the DOE-OE Initiative. This webinar is being presented by the Energy Storage Technology Advancement Partnership, also known as STAP. STAP is a collaboration between the U.S. Department of Energy, Sandia National Laboratories, and the Clean Energy States Alliance, also known as CESA. Before I pass it over to our excellent panel of speakers for our webinar, I'd like to go over a few quick webinar logistics. All of our attendees have a couple of options to join the audio portion of our webinar. You can call in via telephone, or you can connect via computer, mic, and speakers. If you'd like to minimize your webinar console, you can click on the orange arrow that you see circled there. You can also use that arrow to expand your webinar console. And one thing that you might like to do with your webinar console is to submit questions and comments. We are going to be saving some time following our presentations for Q&A with the audience, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. So please do submit your questions and comments when you think of them. A final note, this webinar is being recorded. We will send you an email with a copy of the webinar recording and a PDF of the slides within 48 hours or so. And we will also post all of those materials on CESA's website at cesa.org/webinars. And that's a good URL to know because it's where we post all of our upcoming and archived webinars. So with that, I'd like to now pass it over to our moderator for today's webinar, Todd Olinsky-Paul. Todd is a Senior Project Director here at CESA, and he is going to get us started.
Thank you, Samantha. Welcome to the webinar, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. Samantha, let me know if that's not true. And I will be introducing briefly the Clean Energy States Alliance and the STAP program, and then our speakers for today. Clean Energy States Alliance is essentially a membership organization for state clean energy agencies. You can see on the screen many of the state member logos. And CESA is a nonprofit that works to help these state agencies to better administer their clean energy programs. If you just advance the slides, please, Samantha. One of our projects is called STAP. That's the Energy Storage Technology Advancement Partnership. And we conduct this STAP project under an agreement contract with Sandia National Laboratories. It's funded by DOE Office of Electricity. And this project is devoted to supporting large-scale energy storage demonstration projects across the country, and these are done as collaborative efforts between state and sometimes municipal agencies, U.S. DOE Office of Electricity, and Sandia National Laboratories. In addition to supporting these projects, we disseminate information on energy storage through webinars such as this one and through other means. And we are working with Sandia and sometimes with PNNL to support state energy storage policy and regulatory efforts. Next slide, please. Before I introduce today's speakers, I'd like to thank Dr. Imre Gyuk of US DOE and Dan Borneo of Sandia National Laboratories for making this work possible. Next slide, please. So we have a number of speakers today. Dr. Gyuk is going to start us off with an introductory talk on the importance of social equity in our energy storage work. Then we will hear from Ryan Franks of Pacific Northwest National Laboratory and Henry Guan of Sandia National Laboratories. They're going to be talking about this energy storage for social equity initiative, and just not only describing the initiative, but also giving you information about how you might be able to participate if you are so inclined. Then we will take questions, and I'm told that Dan Borneo, also from Sandia National Laboratories, will be calling in later in the program to perhaps help field some questions. So That's my intro. I will pass the torch to Dr. Gyuk for his introductory remarks.
Well, hello, I'm Imre Gyuk, and I direct the Energy Storage Research Program at the Department of Energy, Office of Electricity. And today I will talk about energy storage and how to achieve social equity for urban, rural, and tribal communities through energy storage. Well, first, how do we get into energy storage? Well, global warming is real and it's worldwide. A few months ago, Hurricane Ida was devastating the East Coast and inundating New York City, while at the same time on the West Coast, we had a 400-year drought. And we all know why. It's because of the carbon in the atmosphere, carbon that we put there ourselves. If you look at the diagram, you can see that the current amount of carbon in the atmosphere is almost twice the highest amount in the last 800,000 years. Well, global warming has emerged as a paramount issue, and it has done so worldwide. We are all in this. We must decarbonize. We must all change to renewable energy. That's what we need to do. However, if we have renewable energy, it means we have variable generation. Wind and solar, unlike fossil, are variable. At the same time, the load has also become variable. If we are going to have widespread electrification of transportation and heating and air conditioning, and at the same time distributed generation all over the place, we have a variable load. And between variable generation and variable load, we need storage. Storage will be the buffer between those. For 100% decarbonization, we will need to overbuild renewable power and use large amounts of energy storage just to balance load and generation. Now, this will entail a vast reorganization of the entire electricity industry. And it's important that we not create or proliferate an energy divide, which finds less affluent communities left behind. We have a digital divide. We have the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. Let us not do that in energy. Unfortunately, it's already happening. If you look at the the price of electricity, over most of its course, it has matched the consumer index fairly well. But in the last decade, electricity prices have considerably outstripped consumer prices in general. As a result, there is an energy burden. And the energy burden as a percent of income is fairly little if you are on the rich side of the population, but if you're on the less affluent side of the population, it can be as high as 16% of your income. At the same time, major power outages have been occurring much more frequently in North America. And this, of course, is partially due to global warming. We also note that extreme heat causes more deaths than any other natural disaster. Studies show that temperatures in less affluent neighborhoods of cities may be 15 to 20 degrees higher than in tree-shaded suburbs. So, outages and electricity prices affect the poor disproportionately. If we break this down into population groups, we find that among households experiencing energy insecurity, we have 81% of American Indian or Alaska Native. We have followed this by Black or African Americans, and Hispanics or Latinos. In other words, lower income households are disproportionately non-white. Outages tend to be more frequent in poor areas and take longer to mitigate. Electricity assets are often located in the least affluent neighborhoods, leading to health issues. Resiliency measures like rooftop solar and behind-the-meter storage tend to be installed by the more affluent. And electrification, like electric vehicles, benefit the more affluent, but infrastructure costs are borne by all. Energy storage offers itself as a tool to alleviate many of these problems. Storage, for example, can replace fossil fuel peakers, and these are often in less affluent neighborhoods with resultant problems in breathing and general health problems. Microgrids with storage are good for outage mitigation. They're also good for solar and storage works well for remote tribal communities. And so we have a number of options. For example, in Oakland, a peaker, and a rather dirty peaker, is right next to a distressed community. And this peaker is going to be replaced by energy storage. 100 megawatt of solar and 30 megawatt, 100 megawatt of solar and 30 megawatt of storage, plus 57 megawatts of wind will take care of this peaker, which had been putting 868 gallons of diesel into the air every year. Another example here, a remote village in Alaska. It has no real access by either road. It has no access to electricity. It's run entirely or almost entirely by a 6 megawatt run-of-the-river hydro, plus 2 megawatts of diesel. Well, we can eliminate much of the diesel by introducing a megawatt storage to replace the 0.5 megawatt of spinning reserve. This eliminates the diesel, and we note that hydro is much cheaper than the diesel by a factor of 10. Here is the storage facility that we installed, and it has been humming along very nicely and saving the community money and making it work more smoothly. And here is an example by the Bad River Band of Lake Superior in Wisconsin. And they had a flood some time ago, which caused a multi-day power outage. Well, they put in $2 million of a microgrid, which serves the administration building, the wastewater treatment plant, and the health and wellness center. And together with 500 kilowatt of solar, 500 kilowatt of storage will take care of this community and provide resiliency, sustainability, and a predictable budget, and above all, energy sovereignty. We also need to develop new metrics and new models that allow inclusion of social equity in the operation of utilities and in statewide integrated resource planning. Assuring energy equity for urban, rural, and tribal disadvantaged communities should be a high priority for the US. Now, to do this, I have introduced an initiative at the Office of Electricity. It's energy storage for social equity. 15 communities will be selected to receive detailed technical assistance. And from this group, 5 communities will be chosen to partner in constructing an energy storage facility. You can find this on the internet for more details. We need much more energy storage in future, and we need it bigger and safer, less expensive and longer in duration. And we need to apply it in equitable ways. If we don't do this, we are in very deep trouble. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gyuk. I would like to ask Ryan Franks from PNNL to go ahead and start. But while we're loading up his slides, I want to remind folks who are on the webinar that there is a questions console that you can type your questions into or comments, and we will be addressing those at the end. So please do that as questions occur to you. Just go ahead and type those in, and that way I can be sorting through those, and I'm more likely to get to your question if it arrives prior to the end of the webinar, because I'll have a chance to take a look at it ahead of time. Okay, and Ryan, you're up.
Very good. Can you hear me still?
Yes, we can.
Very good. Thank you. Todd, thanks for that introduction, and thank you to Dr. Gyuk for that excellent overview. As Todd said, Ryan Franks from Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, and I'd like to talk to you about, and hopefully you'll take away 3 things from this information today. First, what are the goals and the inspiration from the energy storage for social equity, or as the moniker goes, ES4SE initiative, how to apply to it, and what the outcomes of that initiative are. So as Dr. Gyuk was explaining, energy storage has clearly found this continuing role in solving the economic problems in some energy areas, as well as the technical problems in some energy areas. The Energy Storage for Social Equity program expands some of the applications of energy storage and looks to prove out some of the additional applications and use cases, as well as the project formation and project development for energy storage systems. I'm always amazed by energy storage, its characteristics, because it has many unique things going on with it. It's able to be deployed in many locations. It has a wide variety of applications, can solve a wide variety of challenges, and it has many use cases. But how these translate to social equity goals are that energy storage can help address the energy access of communities that are disadvantaged, the energy affordability, some of the environmental impact, such as one example would be the peaker plant, like Dr. Gyuk was explaining. It can help with decarbonization, and of course, importantly, energy storage can assist in increasing the resiliency of communities. The ES4SE program, the clear goal is to support disadvantaged communities that are suffering from high impacts from energy service costs and disruptions. There's a phased approach to this program. Right now, we're in the application process. Communities can apply at the website, which was listed at the beginning of this slideshow, and will be distributed, as well as we'll put the link at the end here. After that application process, we move into technical assistance, in which the technical assistance will move the energy storage project from an idea into a plan by analyzing several aspects. From there, it will go into project development and then deployment. In parallel, some existing projects that may need purely a social equity analysis component will be developed, and my colleague from Sandia, Guan, will talk about those following me here in a moment. But what we aim to do here is really set a bit of a precedent in how to apply energy storage for disadvantaged communities to solve social equity goals. And that's the important takeaway, in part, is that this isn't necessarily an innovation on technology, but it's an innovation in how energy storage can rise to the occasion to meet energy challenges and social equity challenges. ES4SE is unique in a few different ways. The inspiration really comes from a few high-level high-level thoughts, including the EJ40 or Environmental Justice 40 initiative at the DOE. You can read some of the information there, but I won't go into it here. We've made the bar incredibly easy, incredibly low to engage with this program. If you are thinking about applying or know someone who would benefit from taking a look at the ES4SE program, we've made it very simple to get in touch and provide assistance in the application process to determine whether energy storage would be a good fit for the challenge or provide a good solution for the community in question. In addition, the eligibility of this program is linked to need. For both the projects that undergo a technical assistance as well as those that move into development and deployment, workforce and equity are always going to be a part of this. There's a very strong link between not simply developing a commercial energy storage project, but really focusing on the direct and indirect workforce and equity goals. In addition, this is a cohort concept, so we aim to form a community of communities such that the participants in the program can share lessons, share experiences, and build off of the lessons and the information gleaned from one project to hopefully accelerate future projects and concurrent projects that are going on. In addition, the ES4SE program has a direct connection to project funding. The projects that move from technical assistance into development and deployment will receive funding. But in addition, we aim to set a precedent in figuring out the contractual obligations, the contractual structuring, and the project formation for social equity energy storage projects. So for the TA, the technical assistance, as a high-level overview, the goal is to transition communities from the problem to a solution that is enabled by energy storage. This technical assistance will be provided through in-kind guidance from Sandia and Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, including training, economic and technical analysis, and support to move these energy storage projects from the idea and the problem to a solution and a plan. There will be 10 to 15 communities that are ultimately selected in the initial cohort from the application phase. So the result of the technical assistance will be a resulting framework for energy storage system project development, focusing on a few different areas summarized here. The innovation and imagination are strongly encouraged. I mean, there's so many jurisdictions and communities within the United States and administrative districts that I'm very excited to see what comes out of some of the areas that are identified that energy storage can assist with. But the technical assistance will result in a framework that provides information on the technical feasibility for implementing energy storage, including the siting, the sizing, and any specific considerations that are unique to the site. For example, if it's located next to a marine environment or a very hot environment, special considerations might need to be in play for the right energy storage system to be developed. It would also result in analysis on the economic benefits, including both the direct energy savings and as well as the indirect economic activity that might result. And this is where some of that imagination and innovation comes into play. Thirdly, the social equity benefits, including an analysis of workforce development, decarbonization, decreased pollution. And as I mentioned, one important aspect, in addition to those first three, is the structuring of the finance and the contractual feasibility. And we aim to provide options, networking, and identification of the stakeholders that need to be involved in that process. There's such a varied nature to these energy storage projects that the technical assistance really isn't a one-size-fits-all type of endeavor, however. Really, it exists along a spectrum from light to heavy. Perhaps as one conceptual example that I've listed here, and there are many, is as an example, a municipality that is obtaining wholesale energy from a supplier, but they have geographic energy constraints for their supply, and perhaps they face high demand charges, but they have this idea to implement an energy storage system. In that case, perhaps in this conceptual model, the technical and energy analysis will be light because they might be working with the electrical engineering community, the utility, or other electric service provider, and they might have those plans figured out. They might not quite have the project development and financing analysis figured out, so that might be a middle of the road type of endeavor and lift. But they may not have considered the true equity outcome of their project, and so that might be a fairly high level of engagement on that aspect. But of course, again, these are varied, they can run the spectrum. On the left there, you can see a couple of different types of energy storage projects that are envisioned, and by no means are these exclusive. They're purely meant to sort of jumpstart thinking for the many communities that are out there to consider energy storage. But focusing on a couple of those areas, energy storage to increase access, affordability, decarbonization, environmental impact, and resilience. Perhaps as one further example, focusing on resilience, there might be an administrative district community that looks to create a resiliency center. And they might have a goal towards enabling perhaps 4 hours or 8 hours or an entire day of backup power for a community during a storm or other type of natural disaster. And they might have broad ambitions towards creating a microgrid or creating some other type of very robust, resilient, high-performing energy distribution system. This might get them part of the way and try to implement energy storage to begin that process of creating a resiliency center, for instance. Or they may have very advanced plans such that they have an entire framework towards developing this resiliency center, and this portion of it with energy storage purely supplements their existing framework. So again, these type of projects can really exist in a variety of ways, and I'm very excited for the results and the potential that may come out of this. So who can apply? This is a bit of a frequent question. It's really very open. Community development organizations, economic development organizations, many types of nonprofits, administrative departments, as I highlighted, including things like school, water, and sewer districts, individual towns and municipalities, commercial entities, tribal organizations and departments, of course, and in conjunction or alone with utilities and electric cooperatives. So what is really important, and the takeaway here, though, is that the applicant needs to have needs to be a representative of the community and be able to engage in the program with the National Lab staff and other stakeholders and exist in a collaborative and cooperative framework. The projects that are selected from the applicants for these 10 to 15 technical assistance projects will be ultimately determined by a review committee full of very seasoned individuals that are working with us, but they'll be evaluated on a few different sets of criteria. We certainly want to maximize the impact of the potential energy storage system. Second, the laboratory analysis and the technical assistance and ultimately the deployment need to provide a unique benefit and not be duplicative of perhaps a commercial endeavor. Thirdly, as I mentioned with the nature of the applicants, the applicant needs to be representative of the community and needs to have the time and the support to truly engage. And certainly we hope that, and we aim to develop a cohort, as I mentioned, so that these communities are able to share lessons and engage with other participants and support those that are concurrently in the process and those that come into the process in the future. And finally, it ultimately has to be technically feasible, and energy storage has to be in some way, shape, or form able to be implemented in the community and be able to solve the problems or create new opportunities in the community. All this culminates, though, in these important deadlines. So this Friday by 5 p.m. Pacific time is when the interest form is due. However, the interest form is not a requirement to submit a full application. This is purely for initial engagement and essentially an expression of interest such that National Lab individuals and staff can further engage with community representatives to fully develop the application. Again, really aiming for that easy engagement and low bar towards gathering participants and gathering ideas for energy storage for this ES4SE program. Following that expression of interest, a member from PNL will schedule a follow-up with the interested parties and identify the other stakeholders that are necessary and develop a good idea of what energy storage can do for these communities in terms of solutions to problems or as a way to open up potential. The ultimate application is due by Friday, December 3rd at 5 p.m. Pacific time. You can access all of this information at that link at the beginning of this presentation or put there again in the slide. And ultimately, applicants will be notified after their selection by the review committee in February of next calendar year. And with that, I will turn it over shortly to my colleague, Imre Guan from Sandia National Laboratory. But I do want to express thanks and acknowledge the support of this program from Dr. Imre Gyuk at the DOE-OE Energy Storage Program. Thank you very much. Todd, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. So that outlines the technical assistance and now portion of the program and the application process. Imre Guan from Sandia will now talk about Sandia's role.
All right, good afternoon. I'll test my mic. Can you hear me, Todd?
Yes, I can.
All right. Well, good afternoon and thank you. Thank you for that awesome overview, Ryan. My name is Imre Guan with Sandia National Laboratories. I'm an electrical engineer with Sandia's Energy Storage Program and more specifically our demonstration projects team. Today I'll be going over the energy storage for social equity, project development, and deployment assistance. So in my presentation, I'll be going over the demonstration projects program, kind of who we are, what we do, and then Sandia's role in the Energy Storage for Social Equity initiative. So the demonstrations projects program has quite a few folks on the team. Dan Borneo, Waylon Clark, and myself are the primary project engineers. We're the project leads and main Sandia points of contacts for the projects that we're working with. Sandia also has a team of engineers that supports analytics, engineering analysis for storage systems. These are the folks who utilize modeling tools to develop at Sandia to assess things like battery system sizing, evaluation, battery system management, controls. To the right are others who support the demonstration program, and each of these individuals contribute specific expertise to our overall program. So what does the demonstration projects program do? So we work with various utilities, state energy offices, academia, and other entities in the energy storage industry to support development, implementation of grid-tied energy storage systems. So the goal of this work, the big picture is to proliferate the use of energy storage on the nation's grid. We do this by providing unbiased third-party expertise and consultation in engineering analysis to help folks in the development of RFI, RFP documents, consulting and design, procurement, construction activities, helping review commissioning plans, and providing operations support or helping them answer questions about operating their system. So in return, we use these project deployments to learn about and inform the nation on the different aspects of storage system installations. So this includes the development of best practices, development or updates to codes and standards. We also utilize these projects as case studies to assess new developments in battery system management or controls, or just to assess new storage technologies. We also utilize data from these installed systems to help us validate and improve modeling tools. So the energy storage program is currently involved in about 20 projects across the nation. And as part of the Energy Storage for Social Equity initiative, we'll be adding a few more to this list here. So now moving into the actual project development and deployment assistance for the ES4SE initiative. So the objective for this project deployment and development assistance is to leverage Sandia's existing demonstration program and the experience and expertise that Sandia has in this space to benefit disadvantaged communities and help them in translating the solutions that are identified in the PNNL technical assistance into real-world solutions, or projects that are constructed, steel in the ground, so to say. Selected candidates will be evaluated and selected for the project development and deployment assistance based on project merits and qualifications and a set of criteria that I'll go over. So at this time, we're looking to support up to between 5 or 6 projects for this portion of the ES4SE initiative. So the program overview, this may look kind of familiar. Ryan went over a version of this in his previous presentation there. So this is kind of color coded to help show the different phase 1 and phase 2 portions of the initiative. So projects that are going to be considered will come from 2 different avenues into the PDDA phase. The first is the PNNL technical assistance application that Ryan just went over. So once the TA has been completed, Sandia will receive the list of completed TAs from PNNL for consideration. And then the other avenue, also mentioned previous, was this existing pipeline, existing projects pipeline. So what is this initial project pipeline? So sometime back in the summer, CISA issued an expression of interest to gauge project ideas for an implementation of energy storage projects. One of the topics of interest in CISA's EOI was projects that advance social equity. So of all the respondents to CISA's EOI, 9 of them were in that social equity space. So these 9 social equity related projects will also be considered for ES4SE. That's what the initial projects pipeline is. So all of these potential projects or successful applicants to the TA process, they'll be considered against this criteria when they come to this PDDA phase. And this is really to assess, I'll say quote unquote readiness for a project to move into PDDA and be successful. Things like, how well scoped is this project? Is there do they have resources for executing? Does the community have resources for executing this project or partners? Or is there a site location selected? Estimated project cost, security of funding, technology, etc. And so just a quick timeline of what we are anticipating And please keep in mind, this is assuming, everything is straightforward and goes well and there's no other questions or hiccups. But once the technical assistance is completed by PNNL, we're looking at about 4 to 8 weeks to review those successful applicants against or completed TA against the criteria that I just mentioned, and about another 4 to 8 weeks to meet with these successful candidates and discuss their projects and how to implement, and then from then about 8 to 12 weeks before we kick off the PDDA. All right, so that's a quick overview of Sandia's role in the Energy Storage for Social Equity Initiative. Wanted to give a big thank you to Dr. Gyuk and the Department of Energy's Energy Storage Program and our partners at PNNL.
All right. Well, thank you to all the presenters. We have a lot of questions, and hopefully we'll be able to get to a good number of these. I believe we have Dan Borneo joining us as well to help field questions as well as our speakers. So, first question, how can an energy storage technology company get involved? And I'll just put these out there, unless it's specific to a particular speaker, I'll just put these questions out, and whoever can best address it, please just jump in.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. This is Ryan. I'll go ahead and answer that. So an energy storage technology provider, a vendor, perhaps to use that term, it is important in this program to find a community that has a need for energy storage. And so the best way to engage might be to find a good applicant in a disadvantaged community that is looking to solve a challenge with energy storage and work with them.
Great. Another question, would the tribal storage initiative require cooperation from the local utility? I'm going to assume that might vary from case to case, but anybody want to speak to that?
Henry?
So I'd say for projects like that, it really depends. It comes back to that criteria or question on resources. Does that tribal entity have the resources to successfully execute the project? There are some there are some tribes with either consultants or they work with architecture engineering firms, or they have their own utility that can fully support this program. And if that's not the case, and they will be connecting onto their local utility system, then there will need to be some coordination and interaction between those two.
Okay. We have
Todd?
Yes, go ahead.
Todd.
Yep.
Todd, I want to go back to the first question. This is Dan Borneo. One thing I think should be mentioned is when we look at these projects, we're going to be looking at high TRL level or high TR level systems. So we want to be able to install a project that's going to work. This is not really a R&D effort. So any vendor that's looking for a partner should be at a high TR level.
Thank you. And for those who don't know the lingo, TR is technology readiness. Is that correct?
Yes.
That is correct.
Okay. So in other words, please don't try to apply with some brand new concept for storage that's never been tested out anywhere, because that's really not the focus.
That is entirely correct.
Okay. Thank you. We have a couple of questions about the timeline in terms of applications, and I know that was covered, but people are still apparently a little bit confused about when applications are due, when the process opens and closes, and how long phase 1 lasts, and when the phase 2 projects are selected. So Could somebody just walk us again through that timeline so that people will understand the sequence and the timing?
Yeah, this is Ryan. So the expression of interest form is due this Friday, November 5th by 5 p.m. Pacific time. The applicant, which again is not necessary or required for the actual application. That's merely a request for help and to initially engage with the program. The application firm deadline is by Friday, December 3rd at 5 p.m. Pacific time. So we in the interest of fairness, we simply cannot accept applications after that time and day. But following the closure of the application period on December 3rd, there will be a review committee meeting to select the initial cohort of these projects. Then technical assistance, that will occur in February. So applicants will be notified in February of 2022 as to their acceptance and engagement with the program. In March through December of 2022, technical assistance will be conducted. And in parallel with that, in some instances, but also following it, depending upon the intensity of that technical analysis, so a subset of the technical assistance projects will move into the development phase. Henry, if you'd like to add on anything with regard to that phase 2, please feel free.
All right, thanks, Ryan. Yeah, as I went over in that second to last slide, once all of the TAs are completed, that's when the timeline for phase 2 begins. And so we're looking at approximately 4 to 8 weeks to review those completed TAs against the PDDA criteria. And from there, we're looking at about another 4 to 8 weeks approximately to meet with the selected participants for PDDA.
Okay, great. Somebody wants to know whether the ES4SE initiative could be paired up with the Inclusive Energy Innovation Prize. And I'm not familiar with that, so hopefully somebody else will be. Does anybody know about the Inclusive Energy Innovation Prize? Or can we just generally speak to pairing this program with any other kind of incentive or grant program?
Yeah, so I could not speak directly. I've heard of the Inclusive Energy Prize. I could not speak directly to that program's limitations because I'm not familiar with it. But broadly speaking, as you say, Todd, so if there is no, in the TA phase of this, there is no exchange of funds. So there is no explicit conflict of interest necessarily with any other program. So if this ES4SE program complements another program, I would certainly be all for engaging in both.
On the other hand, for phase 2, cost shares are highly desirable. So if you come up with a cost share either from a utility or from a philanthropic organization or from state funds, then by all means do that, and it will make the project bigger and better.
Great. Well, that leads us right into another question about cost share. Somebody is asking, are there cost share requirements? And if so, what's the minimum?
Dan?
So this is Henry. I can answer that, and I think
Okay.
I'll mirror what Dr. Gyuk just mentioned. Cost share is preferable. The amount of cost share and what cost share there is or that will be provided through this program will be highly dependent on the program, what its funding needs are, and what funds are available at that time?
Yeah, we have a certain budget available, and if your project fits into that budget, fine and good. If your project is bigger, or if you would like it to be bigger, then you can enlarge the project at will by bringing in money from other places.
Okay, going back to the question about the inclusive prize. I'm not sure I'm not sure I'm getting that term correct, but the question about the prize. Somebody from PNNL has commented that we know about this prize, and then says, can we invite the questioner to explain the connection to inclusive innovation? So if that person is still listening and they want to write into the question box what the connection is, that would be helpful. Okay. Somebody is asking about information and outreach. The question is, does DOE have public outreach materials or recommendations for interested parties to provide education on areas of public concern regarding energy storage? Some communities that could receive social equity benefits from energy storage infrastructure are wary of building new infrastructure and prospective technologies. Any comment on that?
Well, the question is whether you consider energy storage a prospective technology, because energy storage is well documented, and there are many examples of energy storage of all sizes, including kilovolt level size, 500 kV, for example, and up to 300 megawatts. However, materials available, and one of the materials that is very useful is to go into the archives of the Clean Energy States Alliance and find the STAP projects, because we have done reports on all the projects that we undertake at the Department of Energy and Office of Electricity.
Great. Yes, we have a lot of material available through the CISA website, in our publications library and our webinar archive. And Samantha, perhaps you could put a slide up toward the end here with the links so that people could find that information. Another question about funding. Will there be ES4SE funding? If there is PDDA funding, can you share the budget amount? I'm assuming this is in phase 2 they're talking about.
The phase 2 overall budget is $7 million. And well, you can figure out yourself, if you have 5 projects, what that will give per project.
Okay, terrific. Can a large-scale energy storage project that is currently in development apply? Will we need to apply first for the technical assistance, or can we apply in the project deployment stage? So I guess this is a project that's in the development phase already, and they're wondering if they can apply, and if they should leapfrog the technical assistance or not.
In general, I would assume that this program is not really for those types of projects. If you're already in the construction phase or in the design phase, if it's a smallish project, fine, but don't use this vehicle to just get some extra funds for a project that is already well underway.
And this is Borneo. I'd like to weigh in on that. we want to be fair and equitable to all. So we're not going to choose anything until we see everything.
Okay. So what do we? What's the advice to this person? Is it worth having them send in a letter of interest explaining what their project is?
This is Ryan. So I would say, following all of that guidance, the best way to explore this would be to either send an email to the email address that has been posted in the chat, es4se@pnnl.gov, where we can discuss that, or submit a expression of interest on the ES4SE website, and you'll reach the same individuals, and we can take it from there.
Great, thank you. Just to kind of follow up on that, are there intended types of projects? Within everything's falling into this the category of social equity. Obviously, that's the main focus. But within that, are you anticipating this will be primarily front of meter versus behind the meter, or large, small, or versus small scale? Or can we say anything about that? Or is it, as Dan said, we want to see what's sort of there before we make any decisions?
I would think if you're a tribal utility or a small rural utility, then it could be in front of the meter. But in general, I would expect many of those to be behind the meter, and then connect to your local utility afterwards. Or of course, if you are a remote entity, then it's almost by definition behind the meter. Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
That sounds good, Imre. I agree.
Yeah, I think I'd just like to add, and maybe Ryan can chip in here as well, but this program isn't aimed at a specific type of project. It's looking at how it helps the community, the impacts that it has, what it can do for them, right? So I think, and this follows with the guidance Imre just mentioned, is it can vary, it can depend. It will be what the project is doing and impacting will be a big consideration.
Yeah, I would just add that it's important to focus on the social equity aspect of this. So it is not necessarily limited by size, shape, color of energy storage system, but the one thing for certain that it has to have is social equity outcomes.
Todd, one kind of thought in general. So a lot of these questions, it depends. And so I would suggest or recommend to anybody on the call who thinks they might have a project that fits in the criteria that Ryan and Henry put out, to go ahead and do the process. I don't think it's that onerous of a process, and it may be worth a shot. And also, you never know, this is one program, and if we get in, maybe there might be other programs coming down the road. And so some of these projects might not fit into this program, but there might be other things that they will fit into.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to leave it at that. I think we got to most of the questions. And if anybody has a burning question that we didn't get to, you can, of course, contact me. And Samantha, if you could, thank you. There's the contact information for myself and others who are involved in the STAP program, as well as our website and archive addresses. And I want to thank all the speakers and everybody who participated. And I will now turn this over to Samantha for just a very brief announcement of upcoming events.
Thank you. So we do have a couple of webinars coming up One webinar in particular that I want to highlight is going to take place this Friday, November 5th at 1 p.m. Eastern. This webinar is also being presented by the SDAP program, so you'll see a couple of the same faces as you saw today. The topic will be Solar Plus Storage for Clean Energy and Cost Savings at Albuquerque Public Schools. So really exciting project that we'll be discussing on Friday. We hope you can attend. We also have other webinars coming up. You can read more and register on our website, cesa.org/webinars. So that's it for us today. Thank you everyone for attending, and we hope to see you at the next one.